How can a person attain spirituality without taking sannyas? Spirituality is something that can and should pervade every phase of life that we're in. The Indian spiritual tradition gives four different stages of life, and they give them sequentially, although some of us jump out of order. But sequentially, the way they're given is the first stage is the brahmacharya ashram stage, when you're a student, and that's the time to study in school, to study about yourself. Who am I? Not just, am I a jock, or am I a cool kid, or am I this type or that type, or whatever types we have in school. Not that sort of identity, but the real identity, the truth of who we are. That's the brahmacharya. It's not math acharya or science acharya or reading acharya. It's brahmacharya. So in brahmacharya phase, we're learning, regardless of how old we are, we're learning about the nature of the universe. And then we have our grihasthashram stage, when you're married and you have a family and you have a job. And again, some of these can overlap. Because you could be a brahmacharya in your mind and in your intention, even while living the life of a householder. But I don't want to complicate it too much. So we've been given these four stages that you're supposed to go through traditionally, sequentially. So brahmacharya first, then our householder stage, then our vanprastha ashram stage, which is really a transitional phase. It's a phase of withdrawing from the things of the world. You no longer need to be making money. It's the time when, if you had a business, people retire. Children are now grown. They have their jobs. You no longer need to rush around putting food on the table. It's the time to start literally retiring, not just from our career, but traditionally, into the forest, out of the big city, out of the chaos of external and internal life, into a more connected life, connected to the self, connected to God. And then the final stage is the sannyasa ashram stage, which is the ultimate renunciation of attachments to things in the world. But as I said, some of us, find ourselves jumping around. And there's certainly people who go straight from brahmacharya to sannyas without ever having gone through the householder stage. There's no hard and fast rule that it has to be a certain way. But spirituality is a thread that should run through all four of these ashrams, regardless of what order you're doing them in, regardless of whether you're doing all four of them or one of them or two of them. The common thread through them all is spirituality. Spirituality doesn't say, thou shalt renounce everything. Spirituality doesn't say, thou shalt not have a day job, thou shalt not get married, thou shalt not have children, thou shalt not accumulate and acquire wealth. That's not the teaching of spirituality. The teaching is, thou shalt not be attached to those things. Thou shalt not forget who you are, which is why traditionally brahmacharya comes before grihasthi, right? So first I have to know who I am. Only then can I properly move into the stage of having a career. Because if I haven't done brahmacharya properly, if I haven't really learned who I am in the nature of the universe, the divinity of who I am, the wholeness of who I am, well then the minute I get a job, I'm going to start to think that is who I am. Because when we don't know who we are, we take the answer from the world around us. We take our cues from society, from the culture. People say, you're beautiful. We think, I'm beautiful, I'm worthy. People say, you're fat and ugly. We think, I'm fat and ugly, I'm unworthy. People say, you're very smart. We think, I'm smart, I'm worthy. People say, you're stupid. I'm stupid, I'm unworthy. So my identity bounces around based on who's talking to me, where I am, what country I'm in. Go to America, people will say, oh my God, you're way too pale. Don't you get out in the sun? People will go out and buy creams to make themselves brown. Come to India, people will say, oh God, they're much too dark. I want somebody fair. People will buy creams to make themselves fair. So it even goes to just simply what country we happen to find ourselves sitting in. But we take these identities when we don't have one already. And so if my job, my career is a doctor or an engineer or a professor, well, that's fantastic. It's what I do. It's not who I am. And if I've done brahmacharya properly, then when I enter into my career, I know I'm divinity, I'm consciousness, serving as a doctor. I'm divinity, I'm consciousness, serving as a teacher, serving as a secretary, serving as a window washer, serving, regardless of where and how I serve. Which then, of course, means that I don't get my identity wrapped up in how high or how low it is. Because I know it's just what I'm doing. But if I don't have that, then I'm the CEO, I'm very successful, I'm worthy. I'm the window washer, I'm pathetic, I'm unworthy. And again, I'm taking my identity based on what I do. Go into the Vanprast and then ultimately the sannyas stage. So of course the spiritual path is the one pulling you out of things of the world. But typically the questions are always about the grihastha ashram stage. When we say, how can you be spiritual without taking sannyas? Typically what the question means is, I'm married, I have a family, I have a job. Do I have to take sannyas in order to be spiritual? And of course the answer is no. Because doing any of these stages fully is going to bring you into deep spirituality. Whether it's being a parent, whether it's being a spouse. Puja Swamiji's blessing to newlyweds when they first get married is always, may you walk together to this ultimate destination of God realization. Not, may you get so excited about being married and have, so much tension about setting up your home and your jobs and your family and think only about your vacations or your Saturday nights that you forget the destination entirely. That's not the blessing. It's, may you walk together to the destination. So even in the ashram, the stage of being married, of having a job, of being in the world, the teaching is always that through that, you are supposed to attain God realization, self-realization. That it's not about getting stuck in those things. Remember, the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita were given, we know, on a battlefield to a married man, to a father. Arjun was not a sannyasi. And so the teachings are teachings, and when you think God is speaking, clearly God knows what he's doing and chooses the times and the places and the audience in order to give a message. In addition to the actual message of the words that Lord Krishna spoke. And the message is, this is not a teaching given in a cave in the Himalayas to a bunch of renunciants. It's a teaching given in the battlefield to a husband and father. Which means that none of us is exempt from the teachings. That none of us should think in our minds, well, now I'm busy doing this and I'll think about my spiritual life later. Our spiritual life is supposed to run through whatever we do. And so, absolutely you can and should and must have spirituality, even if you're not a sannyasi. The thing with being a sannyasi is, it's obviously more difficult on some levels, but it makes a lot of things more easy. Which is why people tend to think of it as the path of spirituality. Because you really only have one thing to think about. Yes, we work. But we're working through us rather than for us. So it's not about how much am I making. It's not about what's my salary or my bank account. It's not about, how am I going to use this money to put my kids through school. So we serve, we work constantly. Probably in many cases a lot more than people in the Grihastashram stage work. Because we don't have weekends. There's no distinction between a Saturday night and a Monday morning. And yet, it's what through me rather than what for me. And so it makes it a bit easier. When all of what you do is able to be channeled into the path of my spiritual path. So regardless of what may come up, you remember, this is who I am. And so everything that happens gets channeled and funneled through that awareness of, I've renounced everything for spirituality. So it makes it a little bit easier, I think, just in that there's really only one thing to think about. One big thing anyway. But absolutely every phase must be part of your spiritual progress. Every stage that you're in, wherever you are, must be where you're focused on, of using this stage to wake up, using this stage to have that realization, using this stage to connect with the divine.